everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Attendance Bias. I am your host, Brian Weinstein. Today's guest is Ben Whitlock, the bass player of the Burning Dirty Band and a longtime Phish fan who went 19 years between shows. Ben is here to talk about his first show, which turned out to be a classic, November 21st, 1997, at the Hampton Coliseum. Ben's introduction to Phish probably mirrors a lot of our experiences. You're in college, you have a copy of an early or mid-90s album or a live show, you go down as deep a rabbit hole as you can manage, and you somehow make your way to a show. Sometimes, like in Ben's case, that first show turns out to be a total banger and is remembered as a classic played during one of the band's peak tours. On a rare occasion, Phish Inc. even acknowledges the quality of the show and makes it an official release, even though it may take 13 years for that to happen. In addition, Ben was one of the most prepared and enthusiastic guests I've ever had on the show. It was exciting to hear the perspective of a fan who got off the train when Goo Balls were still in fashion and came back when Shakedown Street vendors took credit cards and Apple Pay. It added a new lens to a discussion about a show that deserves the loads of attention that we give it. So let's join Ben to talk about clown cars, underrating Page, and the Big Cypress traffic jam as we discuss Phish's performance from November 21st, 1997 at the Hampton Coliseum. Ben, welcome to Attendance Bias. How are you?
I'm doing great. This is fantastic. Thanks for having me, Brian.
My pleasure. You picked a show today that I think over the past, 25 years or so has seeped into the consciousness, the collective consciousness of Phish fans at large. And that is November 21st, 1997, a seminal show of that fall tour. So a seminal show of a seminal tour. So I'm really excited to discuss it with you.
Yeah, I think I picked a good one for my very first Phish show to attend. And it's only seemed more amazing that was the first one. The further out we get, I'm like, man, I can't believe that was really my baptism into this whole Phish thing.
I have the same feeling with my first show, which was later in the year, but it just, you look back and it seems like nothing can beat that first one sometimes, right?
Yeah, I mean it's a pretty special weekend. Obviously the 21st is probably the more underrated of the two, but the 22nd was, that kind of sealed the deal. You were seeing something special that weekend. There's no doubt about that.
It's funny you say that. We'll save it for maybe about 10 minutes from now, but I always favored the 21st.
Okay.
But
yeah.
we'll get into that. First, let's hear about who you are, Ben Whitlock, as a fan in the Attendance Bias Lightning Round.
Excellent.
Attendance Bias Lightning Round.
So I guess, Ben, we kind of answered the first question about what is your first Phish show and what do you remember from it? Can you give us a short summary of what you remember, like the overall feeling of this show?
Well, getting there was a little bit of an adventure as well. There's some stories we can get into with that. But I think the vibe, I'll kind of start like getting there, like on the lot and seeing the mothership, which I'm from Virginia, and it's a big land. If you're driving through that part of Virginia, you pass by it all the time. The mothership. I'd never been there, the Hampton Coliseum, before November 21st, and I think just getting there, being a wide-eyed 18-year-old kid, not really knowing to expect. I've been obsessed with this band for a couple of years, finally getting to see them. And I was there, funny, at the time when I finally walked on a lot, I was by myself. I was meeting some friends. So it was just kind of thrown into the maelstrom, I guess you could say. I've been kind of overwhelming, a little scary, but I looked around, I was like, yeah, these look like people I would hang with. Yeah, this seems kind of cool. This seems kind of cool.
It feels the same way today, 25 years later. A little scary, but I hang out with these guys.
It's true. Yeah, I still have the same. Yeah, you always get worried. Like, I gotta park. Where am I gonna park? Then?
Right.
Where do I go? Where's the bathroom?
At what time do we have to leave? What are we gonna do before the show to
eat? the usual kind of jitters you get with the show, but it all works out when the music gets going. But yeah, the scenes, same as it ever was. The fashion a little bit different back in the 90s. Lots of patchwork, lots of Sammy Smith's oatmeal stouts, as opposed to like a lot of seltzer that I saw at the last show I was at. So
here's the real tell.
Did you have
a hemp necklace?
I dabbled in hemp jewelry back in the 90s. So I would say that seems like a certainty. I don't think I have any photos from this show. Again, with cameras not being the as ubiquitous back then as they are now. I don't think I have any photos at all from this weekend, but That's fine. I mean,
Yeah,
might be for the best.
let it live in our memories, in our
Yeah,
imaginations.
absolutely.
Well, if November 21st, 1997 at the Hampton Coliseum was your first show, what was your most recent show? And what did you think of it?
Sure. So there's another story there. It was just a couple weeks ago at Meriwether Post Pavilion. So 30th, 31st of July, 2022. And that was the first time I'd seen Fish live since 2003. I was at the Greensboro Coliseum tour closer,
March
spring tour,
1st.
March 1st, 2003. So it was 19 plus years since I had seen Fish live. I think I was struck by, again, some of those we talked about, like the sense you get from being on the lot. How much was the same? You know, you're like, oh yeah, here it is again. The circus has just kept rolling on without me for 2 decades. I could see everyone's doing fine.
What would you
I
say
think
was the biggest difference that you noticed?
well, the age. I think the age range is more diverse now. You know, we were all pretty, in the '90s. Most you're talking 20s, early 30s. Some teenagers is the age, and the average age now. You look around, and go like, oh, okay. I think most people here seem to be in their 30s, 40s, 50s. There's a lot of families at these
Yeah.
shows. I know there's still some younger kids there, not as much. Seem like you definitely like the percentage of teenagers has gone down. While you definitely see a lot more gray hair in the shows these days. I made a joke about it, but I saw it come true on Shakedown Street. I joked and said, "I wonder if the vendors are going to take an electronic card reader, like do like a square swipe." Yep,
They
sure
probably
enough.
do, right?
Yeah, you can pay for a lot of stuff on the lot now with a credit card and a card reader. So, everybody changes with the times. Got to keep that hustle going for the 21st century, I guess, when you're hustling your wares.
Soon enough, they'll have to take an AARP discount also.
I know the band's going to be there real soon.
Well, it hit me at the Baker's Dozen. It was on jam night. I was sitting next to or in front of maybe 4 or 5, I'll call them kids. It was their first show, all of them, all there in a group together. And I left saying to my then girlfriend, like, man, the fan base just keeps getting younger and younger. And then it hit me literally in the middle of my sentence. I was on the train. I said, no, I'm just getting older.
Same as it ever was.
Yeah.
I realized I haven't even mentioned the music from the Meriwether shows, which I thought has been really good. I've really gotten kind of reacquainted with Fish, I would say, since they did that free New Year's show, most recently, the Ninth Cube show. Again, Fish had been kind of off my radar for a while, and I've kind of felt reconnected there, and then watching them live again, finally.
How well did you keep up with them in those 19 years that you did not see them live?
I think like in '04 when they broke up, I was like, okay, well, this is done. So I mean, I really didn't engage at all. They came back, and I kind of thought, well, good for them. I'm glad to hear Trey got it sorted out, but I didn't really pay much attention. You mentioned the Baker's Dozen. That caught my eye. I mean, that was a big story, I think, even outside of just like the jam scene. I was like, well, that's really cool. So I definitely, I think I wound up peeking on a few, might have hopped back on like Fishnet, checking the set list. Cause I thought, well, this is really cool. I kind of have to see what this is going on. But as far as listening, honestly, I haven't, this has been the year when I've kind of really picked up listening again. It's been 2022. And, I've certainly moved around from interest to interest. I'm kind of an omnivore. I'm kind of a restless music listener, but getting back into Fish has been one of those. And again, like in pandemic times, everyone's looking for a little bit of joy, and that was a way for me, I think, to reconnect with something that's meant a lot to me and is meaning something in a new way to me again now.
So you're 18 again.
18 again, yeah, 18 again with again some gray hairs, some mileage, but I think it is good to. Again, connect with the youth, but also appreciate what, I'll stand by this. I can't name another band of like 58-year-olds that is making music this challenging, this still pushing forward, still testing their audience, still not willing to just settle and put it on autopilot. It's kind of a joy to see it unfold and see how they're aging very, very gracefully, in my opinion, at least.
And Ben, you are a bass player, a multi-instrumentalist, but primarily a bass player with your band,
Sure.
the Burning Dirty Band. So my next question is directed at you as a musician, but also to give you a
Sure.
chance to plug a little bit.
Uh,
Tell us a little bit about the Burning Dirty Band, and then the follow-up lightning round question. If you could get up on stage and play any song with Fish, which one would you play? Take it in
Great.
either order you want.
Yeah, I play bass for a little band called the Burning Dirty Band out of Virginia. We've been on a very long time. This is our 22nd year. We played up and down the East Coast, put out a lot of material. Would definitely count Fish as a big influence, particularly in the early days. Just again, we have the exact same instrumentation, guitar, bass, drums, keys. So maybe that lends itself a little bit to some. It's very easy to be influenced when you have that same instrumentation. It's been fun. We've never really jumped in and done it like full time, but it's always been something we've never stopped. And that's I've realized that's a hard thing. I realize that's a rare thing for a band just to keep going and for us to still get along. And again, I think still push ourselves creatively. We still write original stuff. We still release music. And, there's a little bit of comparison maybe I could make, but dare I compare myself to Fish, but we've both been in a band for a very long time. And you understand how dynamics change, how you want to do different things as you get older that you wouldn't have want to do when you were 25. So
if you took Fish out of the list of influences, what other bands might you? If someone never heard of Fish before, and they ask, like, what does your band sound like? I don't know Fish. I don't know who they are. What other bands would you tell them?
I guess in some of the press we've gotten, we've been compared to Wilco, Spoon, the band. I think these are all big influences on us. Some other occasionally we get the Ween comparisons because I think like Fish, we kind of we'll tackle a lot of different genres and sounds with reckless abandon. So that's another apt comparison. David Bowie, Elvis Costello. I don't know. I'm just name good musicians. The meters. Personally, as a bass player, my God, that is the rhythm section to learn from. So that's just I could keep talking. So it's
well, where's the website? Where's the socials? How could people listening to this episode catch up with the Burning Dirty Band?
Plug in Burning Dirty Band into your favorite search engine. We have a website where the usual social medias are up there. There's a Bandcamp. There's some YouTube video. We're out there. We'll show up with a simple web search.
And Ben, the bass player, Fish says, "Hey, come up on stage, play with us. Any song you want." What do you say?
Yeah, how does that work? Yeah, do I just boot Mike off the stage? That doesn't seem right. Guest guitarists have it easy. You can swap right in, but
Mike will respectfully watch from off stage.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Cactus. 2 songs come to mind. One that I've actually covered with my band before, Bathtub Gin, and I love the rhythmic feel of that. It's got that weird kind of loping, kind of shuffly thing that's fun to play around with. It's got just that killer end melody that Trey has. That's, one of the most recognizable melodies I think in the whole Fish catalog, and that's a fun riff to kind of twist around and jam on. But my other thought would be, how much fun would it be to rock out to Carini on that big sound rig on a big stage? I think that would be just pretty epic.
Ben, after a show, what's your favorite post-show snack?
Man, I'm usually not thinking of solid food. I am usually looking for a tasty beverage, be it a Gatorade sometimes if you've had an extra raging kind of dance session, or just an ice cold beer, and then we'll go from there. I think my most recent post show meal would have been some pizza, but I'm always up for a lot burrito or grilled cheese if you can find one. That's it's classic.
What is your most controversial Fish opinion?
Ooh, I'm trying to think of what would truly. I think I probably like the instrumental songs more than most people. Like I would even play like "What's the Use" might be a top 10 song for me, which I don't think is a very common opinion. I love Buried Alive might be my favorite show opener if I had to pick one.
Yeah, that's not controversial at all.
I don't think that's controversial.
No, when they start Buried Alive, you're in for it.
But if I can maybe make a mildly hot take, Mike's Groove. I think I Am Hydrogen might be my favorite part of Mike's Groove. So
that's a good one.
So how's that? Is that at least a mildly hot take there? It's sort of controversial. Yeah.
That last one, I'll take it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And finally, everyone's favorite. What is the weirdest thing you've ever seen at a Fish show?
Yeah, I can't really narrow it down to, like, you see so many just wacky characters and a thing here and there. So somebody kind of zoom out if this isn't a cop out. But I think the ride going into Big Cypress was just kind of a surreal feeling. Just looking around and seeing like the most jolly traffic jam I've been a part of. maybe because I was towards the front. We got down there pretty early, so we didn't have to wait hours and hours. But still, that crawl and just watching people get in and out of cars, sometimes set up lawn chairs. You wandered 10 feet over to your right from your car. You're like, there's 50 alligators in a ditch over there. What is this? What are we doing? Why are 80,000 people going into the biggest swamp in the damn country? What exactly is the end game here? It felt very yeah. I mean, I think it was just kind of a surreal experience for everyone involved. Very memorable, and just getting all the just catching the good vibes from everyone being out there was kind of weird and wonderful and special.
When was this show played?
Today's show, November 21st, 97, is probably the heartbeat of the Fall 97 tour, I would argue. It's kind of right in the middle, like beginning, middle of the tour sequentially. But if you asked me to name two shows to recommend from this tour, this one would definitely be one of them. The other one I'd have to think about, maybe a couple days earlier in Denver. But this one sticks with me. Overall, the Fall 97 tour, it's arguably their best known and fondly remembered tour. I don't know if the Island tour could count. I don't think it's apples to apples, but this is probably one of the top pinnacles of Fish's career. It's been discussed on this podcast, message boards, blogs, amongst fans in person. There's not much that we can say that hasn't already been said. But in addition to the cow funk, there's spread out and more democratic jamming. People for a Louder Mike achieved their goal.
Yeah.
From 96. Mike certainly is louder and more present starting now. There's a batch of songs that debuted either earlier during the summer 97 tour or in Europe, some of them on this tour. These Hampton shows in particular have developed kind of a legacy over the past 25 years. In the scope of the fall tour, like I said, they were played toward the beginning or middle of the tour. It was a 2-show run, the 21st and 22nd. And these were paired with the next night, November 23rd at Winston-Salem, and released as an official soundboard in 2011. And these were famous shows before that. So you could tell by listening to this recording that they were playing with a swagger. They had a confidence, certainly, all four of them as a unit, that they didn't really have in 96, even though that was a great year also. This tour was something of a victory lap, I think, of the summer tour, where they were trying this new sound, playing these new songs, and it was wildly successful. So November, they walked in and they're like, let's just fucking do it. Let's go. Let's take over. And they did. Fish destroyed America. We could spend this entire hour just talking about highlights of the Fall 97 tour. What are your impressions of it looking back?
Yeah, well, yeah, I did pick a show that was a deep cut. That is for sure. I mean, you're right. I mean, Fall 97 is, I think, grows in stature. I think, well, like you mentioned, it's the maybe the beginning of the spot where you can both hear what Fish sounded like as a bar band in Vermont in the 80s, and also where you can listen back to 97 and you can hear what Fish sounds like in 2022. And I'm not sure you can do that in 96 or 95 even, as much as they were growing year by year. That was, I think 97 is, like you said, it's kind of the right perfect alchemy of all these different elements. And besides the obvious, maybe cow funk, I think there's just a different, there's a looseness that's kind of hard to tell, where it doesn't seem like they're so tight, so worried about maybe trying to, I don't know if they were thinking about building their fan base those earlier years. They're getting very big, very fast, but it seems like in 97, they're like, okay, well, you're here now. You're gonna have to see what happens with this next thing that we have in mind. That's maybe doesn't sound like what you're used to the last couple of years, and having the confidence to do that. Yeah, that's not an easy thing for a band to do.
And something that I noticed, to add on to what you just said, you mentioned the word looseness. I think they're really tight. I think they're on point and they're playing very smoothly. I think the word that struck me the most in this umpteenth listen of this show, in preparation for our conversation, was the patience that they demonstrated. In
Yeah.
94 and 95, partially in 96, they were in a rush to get to the next song. Trey especially was playing at 110 miles per hour with every solo that he could, whether it was the composed one or is during improvisation. As we'll get to it, during this show, you could hear that they could have ended a song a minute and a half earlier, but they didn't. They just continued to vamp until they were ready to decide what comes next. And I think that was a motif that developed among this whole tour. And it's such a pleasure to listen to.
Yeah, again, I mean, Trey is obviously, very obvious. He's the band leader. He's the focus. He's going to be the front man. But it was more. He was very more obviously the focus just a couple years before. Like you said, really, really guiding the jams through sheer speed, as opposed to guiding the jams like he does in this show, with again a more measured approach, a more group oriented approach that was. I think a lot of times you can definitely hear the band just like along for the ride, trying to keep up with Trey and Fishman. I think in some of those like 92, 91 shows where they are just dialed in, where they're real road warriors and everything is really, really snapping by. I mean, they're playing these compositions in their sleep at that time. And the way that just 5 years later, again, I feel like they're a little more comfortable with what they've accomplished, and maybe don't feel the need to just dazzle with their pure technical abilities. Now they really want to create a really full soundscape that isn't just solos upon solos, and I would say they succeeded.
I agree. So Ben, you mentioned earlier that when you arrived on Lot, you were 18 years old. What was going on in your life in the fall of 97? Who were you and what led you to this show at Hampton?
So I would have been a freshman in college at James Madison University in Harrisonburg, Virginia. I think I found out about the show, I want to say, with that Fish Destroys America poster with the
with the afro.
Yeah. I remember them running that ad in the campus paper, and I think that might have been how I saw that. I was like, oh yeah, I better get some tickets to that. And so I mean, again, kind of living on my own for the first time, getting a little taste of the college life. I come from not a tiny town, but not a big town, so again, kind of eye opening, meeting new people from around the country, and finding out who you are is the as you go off to college. And definitely music was becoming a bigger part of my life and identity. And again, Fish had been a band that I started getting into in 1990, I guess 95. A live one is kind of the first album that really sunk its teeth into me. And this felt like an adventure. Again, just getting to the show. I contemplated buying a Greyhound bus ticket to get from college to Hampton. I had some friends say that's probably not a good idea.
Well, where's JMU compared to Hampton?
I would say it's probably, you're talking about by car, 3.5, 4 hours by car, let alone what that would be like by bus. Anyway, I mean, long story short, wound up kind of going there in a small car with my friend Scott, who's like 6'4" in the back, my friend Patrick. We wound up picking up a guy who was completely blind. I can't remember the guy's name. This is an interesting crew that was assembling. And then my buddy Matt also rode along with us. You might know he was Luschek on Orange is the New Black, the TV show. So if you can picture this weird cast of characters, and also my buddy's 4'10" girlfriend laying across all of us sitting.
I was going to say, how many seats did this car have? Was it a Volvo station wagon?
Not enough. Far fewer than the number of passengers, but we just had to get to Richmond, and then we split up into two cars, and then on to, this is classic college freshman shenanigans going on here, in case you can't tell, but we got there somehow.
What Fish music were you most familiar with? I know you mentioned a live one. Were there any songs that you remember? Like, what songs would you have hoped that they would play? Do you could time travel your brain?
I absolutely know my number one would have been Stash, like that the version of Stash on a live one. I mean, that is still that's a mind melter. I think, as far as that tension and release, that classic '94 style of playing it is. I mean, dynamite. Still thrilling to this day, just to hear some of those runs and the tension and the weird way that song just kind of builds and builds and builds, and you think it's finally arrived, and they keep you kind of yanking the rug out from under you until it finally gets there. And when it does, it's if you're a Fish fan, you know the feeling when it comes and they finally hit that one note. So that was up there. I was a huge fan of Billy Breathes, just as like a studio album. again, which might have been kind of a controversial take. I know that album was definitely the older heads did not approve of this more song oriented, softer focused version of Fish. But I really, to this day, I mean, I would say that's, if not their best album, I mean, probably in the top two. I think that, Rift, and Story of the Ghost are the three best studio albums. So I don't know, pick an order.
Talk about an unconventional opinion. I think that Sigma Oasis is their best studio album. Their recent one, I think it's the best blend of studio production, them sounding like themselves, and a combination of really good songs.
Yeah,
I was also completely isolated and walking around my neighborhood with nowhere to go for a year while I was listening to it. So again, that might have something to do with it. But I do pin Sigma Oasis with Billy Breathes in the 2 spot, and I would guess A Picture of Nectar third.
Okay. Yeah, the crazy diverse one, from early on in the career, yeah.
And why do you have attendance bias toward this specific show? Of all the shows you've seen, why this one?
I mean, as the cliche goes, you always remember your first, right? It's hard not to call back, as you mentioned, to who you were. Just remember that the novelty of it all, the scene. I mean, when people talk about the feel of Hampton Coliseum, I mean, it's tangible. It's very quick. It's such a small, again, like an intimate venue where you can tell the band loves to be there. And I think, Fish is not the only band that's made that comment. There's lots of bands that have commented, especially on now, Hampton Coliseum is a good place a great place to put on a show. So, I think you can just feel that everything was right. Just in some sort of way that's almost hard to express. You could just feel there was a comfort level with everything that's happening there. Also, I feel like you get that little sort of mini festival feel with Hampton, with all the hotels being very, very close there. So that also kind of just I think contributes to the to kind of the festive nature of it all.
Set 1.
Set 1 opens with a wallop. It opens with Emotional Rescue by the Rolling Stones. I have to imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, that fewer than 1% of the crowd knew what was going on.
Well, I would say my personal feelings, again, I'm all stoked to see this band that I've been obsessed with. Here it comes. The lights go down. They start playing a song. I'm like, what is this? Where am I? Do I start dancing now? Is this but I heard some woos go through the crowd, and finally, I can't remember, at some point in the middle of the jam, I think I finally someone whispered, "Oh, yes, the Stones, Emotional Rescue." I was like, okay. And then this was back in the days when I think there were more walls between like bands and scenes and cliques. And I was a big Beatles fan, which meant that for some illogical reason, I kind of had the Stones pegged as like that lesser, less serious band. The Beatles are the real artists. The Stones merely sing about just sex, drugs, and rock and roll cliche. But
they're just a cover blues band. Yeah,
I came around pretty quick, and it didn't take too long for me to see the error of my ways there. But at the time, as an 18-year-old, I definitely did not know Emotional Rescue. Did not know those deep cuts yet.
And it makes sense that they would open with this in a fishy way, because it features Mike in the number 1 spotlight. We talked earlier about how Trey was always the front man. Mike is the front man here, inarguably.
And again, what a bizarre experience. The very first thing out of Fish's mouth when I'm sitting there watching that show, there's nothing I can say, there's nothing I can do. like, what is going on here? And they were we were off. I was, it's hard not to dig that disco beat. So I mean, I fell right into it pretty quick there.
And the funny thing about it is I laughed the first couple of times I listened to it. Like Mike is doing some goofy backstage, almost karaoke performance. But then when you listen to the original, it's not any less or more serious than what Mick Jagger was doing. This doesn't sound like the Stones either.
No, absolutely not. I think no one's going to call Mike Gordon Mick, but Mike also brings some bass skills, maybe that Jagger doesn't have, and no one can doubt that Mike was not really feeling it tonight. I mean, you can tell he was having a ball doing this song to bust it out, and it's still. Also, I had to check it out. I was like, man, this song never really latched on. I'm seeing they only have ever played it 6 times.
Yeah.
What a treat, I guess.
And we'd be very remiss on this show to bring up Emotional Rescue from Fall 97 and not talk about the jam. It's not a joke.
No. I mean, and again, that was maybe the feel. I think probably a lot of us were expecting this thing to kind of peter out, but it starts again. It's been a disco opening, but then the first appearance of the cow funk, like 5.5 minutes, it turns. You hear like some minor scales kick in, and you're like, oh, they're gonna sink their teeth into this, and then. I noted 8 minutes, 16 seconds, the very first funk siren I ever got to hear that Fish Fan is unleashed by Trey. And so the classic 97 sound is well underway.
I was surprised, even listening back, at how little Trey plays.
Yeah. I mean, it's a rhythm based song. So I think, Mike and Fishman are probably the most obvious kind of leaders of the groove. You hear, it's interesting. About halfway through, I don't know, about 10-minute mark. Page kind of takes a turn at it, and you can. What I kind of hear at that point, you can still hear like the remnants of the Stones, but it's like Fish has like body snatched them or something, has inhabited the bodies of the Stones and is taking it in this weird direction. The jam keeps morphing a little bit. You get another, I think Trey launches another big whale call about getting towards the end, and then they do this real shifty, syncopated, kind of jazzy, trilly couple minutes that kind of transitions into a really dark place, like about 15 minutes in. And it's fair to say that you can say so long to Mick and Keith at that point. You're well beyond anything the Stones would ever do live. And
well, I mean, we've been past them for almost like 8 minutes already. You mentioned Page earlier. every time I latch on to what Page is playing, he jumps onto a new instrument. I love how much piano Page plays in Fall 97, but then it's like, yeah, but then you're not giving enough credit to the Wurlitzer. It's like, oh yeah, I also love when he plays the Wurlitzer. It's like, yeah, but he's also on the organ at this part. And it's like he's got to be on all fours, each appendage playing a different keyboard.
I think Page will continually. I think he's got locked in as perpetually the most underrated Fish member, just for again, just for the variety of things he has to contemplate as he's playing live. It is, it's great since they've started doing, since live streaming and really being able to catch all those angles and see just all the work that Page is doing to make these textures happen. And it's impressive to watch.
When I was re-listening to this show today, at the very end of the Emotional Rescue Jam, they kick up Split Open and Melt to play next. But I was driving and I thought, wait, did I miss Ghost? Like, did I just, like, I thought by the end of Emotional Rescue, I forgot that that's the song that started it all. And this was a pretty common feature of 97 where you'd say, wait, what song is this again? You forget where it all came from. But Split Open and Melt reminds you real quick.
Yeah. I mean, I think that was the thought in my brain when they started playing that beat. I was like, hey, I know this and I love this. I would today, Melt, that's probably right up in the edge of the top 10. If I had to pick an all-time, favorite songs, I just love it's so quintessentially Fishy. All the weird. You're like, there's no way that Mike's little bass riff should be an earworm. That is a weird bass line, but it is. I mean, that's boom, boom, boom. I mean, I can just play it in my head, and I love that. I'm like, why does that sound so good? This is extremely strange music that works so well as they kind of layer the different parts on top of it.
It is extremely strange, and something that grabbed my attention during the Split Open and Melt was their ability to shift tempos from one section to the other, where it would be regular time, double time, slow down to half time, but they would never lose the beat. They would just kind of change how fast they're playing the beat. And that came up a lot in Split Open and Melt for me.
Yeah, I mean, I love the way that song in general. Just it feels like it stumbles and is off center, but always kind of regaining its balance just before it veers out of control. It's a strange it's kind of an anxious song. You got all these weird jabbing kind of chord comps underneath everything as the jam really gets going, and Trey and Mike are playing all these weird tense intervals that sort of fly past each other, sometimes collide with each other. It's a thrill when that jam is really smoking in that song. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. The melts I've heard recently have changed character. It sounds almost like their Grateful Dead space portion of the show.
Yeah.
Some of the recent versions I've heard. I mean, a very different feel. I can see it not being quite as dynamic, not quite having the momentum of a classic 90s melt, but again, it just kind of proves the band's willingness to kind of redefine their songs as they age.
After Split Open and Melt ends, they kind of take a little bit of a break, at least in terms of musicality, where they play Beauty of My Dreams and Dog Stole Things, complete opposites. The genres sound nothing alike. So it's kind of a little bit of whiplash as a listener. I like it.
again, yeah, you look at those first four songs, so you've got okay, like this coked out disco rock song to open, this bizarro kind of nervy jazz twitchy thing, bluegrass, and then bar band blues. I'm like, this is again quintessential Fish. They're kind of hitting all the covering all the bases. I'm personally not a huge bluegrass fan, but Fish proves time and time again to have very good taste in covers. Because I mean, Bill McCurry is cream of the crop as far as I'm
Yeah,
concerned. If you're
sure.
gonna listen to bluegrass, and the other thing that just stands out is just how just crystalline and fast they could really play this material in '97. It just is real brisk, and yeah, I mean those little licks Trey plays in his solo. You're like, that is some dynamite picking, boy.
And it follows up with a big shot in the arm with Punch You in the Eye, which is never a bad time to play that song. I can't think of a part of a set list where Punch You in the Eye would not be welcome.
Yeah, I was gonna say I had this feeling in my mind, like in my brain at least, that Punch You in the Eye is an opener. So I went back and looked it up. It had only opened 4 shows at this point in Fish's career, but I think maybe the reason it's really locked in my brain as being a show opener is because it opened New Year's '95, like one of the big circulated shows. So I think it was kind of surprising in the middle of the set to me. But looking back on it, I'm like, no, actually, Punch You in the Eye is all over the damn place and set lists if you go look at it. And you're right. It's what could possibly be wrong with that? It's one of the most rocking songs they have.
After that was another break, kind of like Beauty in My Dreams in terms of the hills and valleys of the set with Lawn Boy, where Page introduces Fishman to take a drum solo, and he does that almost nothing.
Electrifying stuff from Fishman on the kit on this one. But this was I was on Page side during the show, so it was kind of thrilled to see Page get up, take a little stroll. I feel like he had good Friday energy. I don't know, he was into it. I think Lawn Boy is a Friday night kind of song. I think Fish should play this every Friday show. Why not? I think we all deserve a Lawn Boy to kind of kick off the weekend. Get that cocktail in your hand and just swag around the stage with that Page confidence.
And yet they'll never play Friday ever again.
Probably not. I did see that at Hampton a few years later. Cannot say that was the same thrill I experienced in this show.
To kick ass after Lawn Boy was Chalk Dust Torture, and I think this was one of the first times in the show where Machine Gun Trey had to make a comeback, where he had to say, I've been playing rhythm for so long, let's get it going here. And they really do. There's a lot of Zeppelin. I wrote down that there's a lot of Trey DD in this version of Chalk Dust.
Oh yeah. I think, pure fun when you think of Chalk Dust. It's got that, that fast 90s tempo. Just listen to Mike in particular. He's you mentioned this is the days of People for a Louder Mic and all that going on, and you can hear it, especially on that soundboard release. Just he's just this rubbery dynamo all over the place, just kind of making the music pop. And when Trey gets going, I mean, he's surfing those tritone waves, there's tension and release going. And Trey, when he picks apart a melody like he does at the end of this song, it's like he's snake charming, like he's just teasing this little theme. You hear bits and pieces, and then it finally assembles at the end. I mean, it really is kind of it's masterful playing for a rock band to pull something like this off, and they did it night after night on this song. So. What can you say?
You mentioned the soundboard recording of this. Do you remember, because you weren't into Fish at the time as much as you once were, do you remember when it was announced or when it came out on soundboard? Were you as excited?
I think it was definitely off my radar, because I think this came out quite a while ago on the official release.
2011.
I think Fish would have been way off my radar. I would have picked it up within the last, honestly, probably within the past year or so. Would have been the first time I would have streamed it
Oh,
or actually
wow.
listened to. I had the tapes of this weekend, so I would have given those a spin over the years for sure. But yeah, it is kind of a revelation to just hearing that clarity and just being able to appreciate all the subtleties in the music. Then
They closed the set already. We're already here with Prince Caspian, which was an interesting choice to close the set. Although at the time, of course, you wouldn't know that they were closing it. Fish.net on their jam charts. Here's how they describe this Prince Caspian. It says, quote, "The jam is well played, but typical. Then there is a long digital delay loop fade out instead of the usual closing chords." And to me, that's what sets it apart. I think they nailed it when Trey at the end says, "We'll be back." And well, he says, "We're going to take a 15-minute break," or, a 15-minute break.
we all know what that means, Trey.
Yeah.
42 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. They go off at 8:30. They'll be on at 9:07.
Yeah, we know what that means. But
the fact that he said it over a digital delay loop, kind of a callback to New Year's '95 when they did that. And it just means tonight is not a normal night.
Yeah, I think Trey seemed to be getting in a habit because he does that same kind of it gives a little brief spiel over the end of Ghost from Denver the few nights before. It seems strange hearing it now. It's just not something you would have expected. But I think Trey loved setting up those loops and just letting them roll. Yeah, listening back to it, it definitely sounded like a bigger, more soaring finale than what I maybe remember in the moment. So yeah, bully for Prince Caspian there.
Hi, everybody. Brian here to welcome you to the set break of today's episode of Attendance Bias. First, thank you for listening. And second, just a quick reminder to tell you that even though Attendance Bias comes to you for free, it does take a lot of work and it does take quite a bit of money to keep the lights on here at production. So I just wanted to ask a small favor if you could support the podcast in any number of the following ways. If you could leave a review or a rating of it on whichever podcast app you use. If you could spread the word, telling a friend or someone you think may be interested in it about it. Or probably the most concrete way is to go to www.buymeacoffee.com/attendancebias and donate however much you can financially to help with the continuing costs of Attendance Bias. So thank you again so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy the second half of today's episode.
Set 2.
And set 2, you couldn't get a better kickoff song. Started with Ghost, which is the song of 1997. They just blew it away a couple nights before on November 17th at, I think it's McNichols Arena in Denver. Probably the best jam of the tour, one could argue. But they bring it back. I don't remember how easy it was for people to know what went on earlier in the tour, unless you were touring with them. So like if someone was at this show with you on November 21st, I don't know how aware the crowd would be that 4 nights earlier, they just crushed Ghost.
Yeah. I mean, definitely. The internet was more of a weird place than a useful place at that time. So
That's
information moved differently. I believe this would have been the first time I'd ever heard Ghost. I was a tape trader, but not like an avid one obsessed with getting the latest shows. So I think my collection at the time would have been the kind of stuff you would expect, Bomb Factory, New Year's '95, Clifford Ball. So I don't think I'd heard any of the '97 crop, but it was pretty easy just from reading set lists and stuff. Like, oh, this has got to be Ghost. It was literally about the first lyrics of the song. And I was like, oh, okay, this is funky. This is cool.
So it starts with a very standard for the time jam, which is almost just the drums at 3 minutes. The song proper is over very quickly, and then Fishman is kind of left out there in the breeze, while the other band members are just kind of taking this minimalism idea almost to an extreme, where it's like someone's going to have to step forward and start playing, but it's not going to be me.
Yeah, it's sort of a spacey kind of maybe it's an obvious comparison, but it's sort of this haunted house kind of thing where you're seeing shadows and things kind of moving, and you're like, what's out there in the shadows? You hear things. I can hear almost around that 7 to 8, 9 minute mark. There's almost like this pleading kind of sound, the strange yearning that's hard to put into words, but it leads into this this kind of ethereal, very delicate kind of sequence right around 10 minutes that almost even works its way back into some of that tension that we heard in Melt back in set one. So that does a lot there just in about 5 minutes. It really gets moving.
It's funny. I heard it otherwise. I heard the same stuff that you did, obviously.
Sure.
But I thought that when the jam starts and all four band members were kind of hesitant to take the lead, that it reached its logical conclusion around 6 minutes. They almost all stop playing. The song almost dissipates completely into nothing until Trey starts playing his wah-wah pedal, which is the MO of this whole tour, basically. But he's not too insistent. He doesn't play it too fast. He doesn't play it too loud. It's just kind of like, hey guys, we're still here. Let's get something going. Mike, you want to step forward? But no one does. And then he starts playing a high trill, Trey does, or the time you mentioned on 10 minutes. And finally it kind of lands in this groove where all four band members are playing. And it could be either beautiful or it could be boring as hell.
I think there's sort of again, I keep coming back to the word like unstable, maybe unsteadiness, which can work. It can be I think it's a sign they're taking chances clearly and figuring out this new material, kind of how it works. I note that Trey, again, the way we talked about how he was simplifying around this time. I mean, he's kind of gives up to like this kind of simplified strumming pattern at the end and kind of lets Page get in some work on the synth and it's kind of the first time I think in the show we've heard Page really do some of those almost nauseous sounds on the synth where he's pitch bending and doing some odd unsettling stuff. And I mean, and again, Fishman is, again, we haven't talked about him too much, but I mean, he's unrelenting on this tour. The work that he's doing to really keep things rhythmically engaging, maybe in a way that maybe in a simpler way in some ways compared to previous work, but that's also got to be a challenge. It's just a new vocabulary they're working their way through at this time.
Yeah, I think it sounds a lot like when James Brown's band would just kind of vamp for minutes on end, and the drummer, you could just record the drummer for 4 bars and then just repeat like a GIF almost, just over and over and over again. That's kind of how I took Fishman for most of this show. He doesn't show off at any given point. He does jam, obviously. Split Open and Melt isn't what it is without John Fishman. But for all of the jams, it's a very simple, straightforward, tight 4/4 beat. So Fishman to me is almost like really, really good special effects in a movie, in that you only notice them if they don't do their job. Like if they call attention to themselves, then they're not good enough. Like, or the crew in a play, on a stage play. Like if they do all their job very well, you don't even know they're there.
Yeah. Drummers have that. They bear that heavy weight, as you know, when you're playing live. You're a guitarist. Yeah, you can flub a note here or there. But when you're, oh man, if you lose the one as a drummer, everybody in the crowd, musician or not, is going to be looking and like, what the hell just happened there? So that is, you're always walking a tightrope with that behind that kid.
And we talked earlier about how they were very patient in terms of their segues. This was flawless from Ghost into AC/DC Bag. It's like on one note they're playing Ghost, and the next note they're playing AC/DC Bag.
Yeah, it reminded me funny enough, at the end of this Ghost Jam, it sounded like they pulled like a 2022 trick where they switched to that major key and it kind of hovers there. And you're like, oh, well, this is different. I said, we're in a different space now. What's happening? And then, I mean, the drop into AC/DC Bag. Yeah. That's one of the best ones I could think I can name because, I mean, AC/DC Bag for me, that's maybe one of the best songs to see live. And I don't even mean the jam. I mean, the song itself was just energy, the sing along. Everyone loves AC/DC Bag. I mean, come on, it's one of the fishiest songs there is. If I had to name them.
But I'm glad that they segued into this. The end of Ghost. I never wrote this word before, and I may never again. I wrote it got a little too shoegazy for me, a little too ambient for me to care enough to pay attention. But then when they get into the jam and AC/DC Bag, they do the speed up at the end like they always do, but then they go back to halftime at about 6 minutes, and then intense rock and roll at 8 minutes. Again, they just, I don't know, there's this screaming rock and roll that Trey played, the whole band plays, but they're all over the place in this AC/DC Bag in a way that still sounds like they're not making any mistakes or doing anything wrong. It's like Fish at their best.
Yeah, they again, it starts off and you think you're going to hear kind of your standard Bag. For me, sort of like the version that was in my brain at the time for the perfect version was the from the Horn Tour, 1991.
Oh, sure.
Pick one of your AC/DC Bag. It was just a really tight arrangement. I love that. But you're right. Right around 6 minutes, like 15 seconds, they hit this big vamp on like I said, a halftime, and the whole band like locks on right away. And it starts going somewhere else that I don't think it really ever happened with this song before. I know this was by far the longest AC/DC Bag ever played up until to that point. I think exceeded it again fairly quickly thereafter. But
I think December 30th, 97, they played an extremely long one too.
But yeah, we just we had no idea what we were in for. I mean, they start getting kind of ghostly. Again, that word coming back up, kind of referencing that sort of dark 97 sound, like around 9 minutes or so. I noticed some stuff like around just a minute after that. Trey hits that there's that weird little high pitch sort of. I kind of call it like a sprite, some sort of little mischievous tone in there. It's a similar tone. He hits it at one point deep in the Live One Tweezer. There's also, and he always plays these weird little cartoonish melodies with that tone on his guitar, and it's very pranksterish. You know that the band is having fun when you start hearing that sort of stuff. Like you said, I mean, the jam just keeps moving. There's a little moment of hesitancy where you think it might start petering it out around like 12 minutes, but then the groove keeps moving. Mike changes things up a little after. At some point, I think it's hitting the crowd that this is a big jam. This is something really special that is unfolding here. I mean, you can tell. I mean, Fish has us wrapped around their finger at this point. It is hushed like around. If you listen to it, I mean, right after like around 18 minutes, they're smoking. Like it is absolutely just flying along like a train. And like a minute later, the crowd is just hushed. It gets quiet. It's mesmerizing. And then finally, I think spontaneously, like about 21 and a half minutes, you just hear a roar come out of the crowd. I mean, I think just again, kind of the mutual acknowledgement. This is special. This is why we're here.
And that
And I
happens
think,
throughout the show in different
yeah,
points. With this song, with the end of this AC/DC bag, you mentioned the 18-minute mark where they're just killing it. Led Zeppelin coming in, crossed with
yeah,
Godzilla, stomping out the
yeah,
whole
it is.
place.
Whew.
But then the last 5 minutes of the jam is very soft and ambient.
Yeah, you thought when that applause came in. I mean, that's a natural place for Fish to wind things down. Even some tones of that little end sequence almost reminded me a little bit of like some desert blues, like something out of like Mali or Guinea. Like there's almost like some Saharan sort of weird little riffs that caught my ear. Again, I think they're just such an adventurous band at this point in their career, just trying out a little bit of everything. That even that a throwaway sequence of a couple minutes it's completely unique. It has nothing to do with the rest of the song, but it just felt like, hey, we got more to say, so we're gonna say it.
And the trust that they have in each other and also in their audience to do that, to feel comfortable enough doing that. Think about how many bands, if they just did this ambient 5 minutes, 5 minutes could feel like an hour in the wrong
Yeah,
set of circumstances.
yeah. Again, I mean, it bears repeating. This is way longer than any ACDC bag has ever gone before. And I think most of us Fish fans who started around like listen to the band in the mid '90s. There's really only a handful of songs at that point you think of as like the big jam vehicles. You think, Mike's song, Bowie, Tweezer,
You enjoy myself.
a couple more here and there, yeah, on the regular. But you generally knew where the big jams were going to come, and that's not the case in '97. That's not the case now in
Yeah, I was going
2022
to
for
say,
sure.
it's not the case now.
So again, kind of the '97 being that fulcrum year where you hear the past and the future at the same time. Hey, there's another instance of that happening.
And another very smooth segue where I didn't even realize they were playing one song until the more recognizable parts came in. After AC/DC bag is over, Slave to the Traffic Light comes in, complete with extended notes that are very charming and very fun to listen to. I didn't know that it was Slave, even though I've heard this song, this show 100 times before. When I listened to it today, the second set, I forgot. Oh, right, Slave is at the end. It's so beautiful.
It is. I mean, it's blissful.
Yeah.
And again, for someone who's kind of my touchstone for Fish, being a live one. I mean, the version of Slave on there is magnificent, and I think this is the moment where I really start to feel comfortable in kind of realizing how effortless Fish could be when they're really feeling it. I think this may be the fishiest moment of the show, if that makes sense. I think just the fact that this song, if I had to play one song from the show to somebody just to kind of explain what Fish is about, I guess it probably would be Slave. Probably just has the combination of things out of any one song from the show. And I mean, what can you say about Slave at this point? You can just bask in what a couple major chords can do. It's majestic playing.
Well, you said you were familiar with a live one and Billy Breathes. Is this the sort of show that you expected? Because you had all the major tapes, you said, like the Bomb Factory and probably
Yeah, I
Arrowhead
think,
Ranch.
yeah, I would have had a couple of those. I really didn't know. Again, news traveling slowly, like me being aware of any big stylistic shift in '97. Well, that's news to me. No,
Yeah.
I was not quite that keyed in yet at the time, so I just kind of thought this is what they were doing now. But Slave definitely is the one where I felt like I could close my eyes and be like, yeah, I'm inside this album. This is Fish. Fish is playing live in front of me, guys. Holy hell.
Especially for someone whose first controversial Fish opinion is that you enjoy their instrumentals more than a lot of other people. I wrote that this is probably the perfect instrumental Fish. This whole build.
I could listen to that chord progression. They could play that for 40 minutes, really. Just the way they just kind of effortlessly are just letting that, again, I keep the word bliss. I mean, it really is that's just what I think of when I think of Slave. Just the beauty of it is, it still touches you no matter how many times you've heard that song.
And they closed the set. We're already there with a classic Loving Cup set 2 closer. More Rolling Stones.
Clever guy. I see what you did there, Fish. Opening up with the Stones, closing out. And this is one I would have known this one from a bootleg at some point. I was like, okay, I see what's going on. It was it's a big party moment whenever Loving Cup. You get to scream out about the beautiful buzz, and everyone is going to be just going to be delirious with joy whenever Loving Cup gets busted out. And funny enough, when I just saw Fish recently in Merriweather, they played, I think, 5 songs from the show during that run, one of which was Loving Cup. So I mean, that again, kind of a special callback to that time and place of them kind of winding down the second set of the first show I was at. Loving Cup. I mean, what a great song. That's a special one that my wife and I kind of share in common or like, which I should also mention that my wife was at this show. I had no way of knowing
the podcast.
I had no way of knowing that. We didn't even meet until 13 years later. But I kind of run over these scenarios in my mind of us, walking just feet by each other, exchanging a glance, and just having no idea where the future was going to take us. But we both have fond memories of this weekend for sure.
They go off
beautiful
stage.
Buzzes.
Yeah. Well, I feel like a Loving Cup is a perfect song for Hampton because it's one of those venues that's small enough that if you were really dedicated and motivated enough, you could kind of point out anyone from any other spot. It's like just that small enough that you can't see a face necessarily, but if your friend told you what section he's sitting in and you kind of knew which row, you could see him no matter where else you are in the arena. And with all the lights on and everyone singing What a Beautiful Buzz, I mean, there's no better way.
I wonder if Fish may have been kind of subtly calling back to the Rolling Stones concert movie filmed at Hampton Coliseum, I think on their 81 tour, which is a banger. Check that one out if you could find it streaming somewhere. I mean, that's another live band that burned this building down and did it with authority. A different way that Fish got around to it, but that's lots of live memories from this venue.
So they go off stage after Loving Cup and come back with Gaiute, which was not new at this time, but it was played very frequently in this era.
Oh, this was a song that followed me around. This is one of the songs I've seen the most live when I was seeing the band live a lot in the late 90s. I think I've seen Gaiute 11 or 12 times. Seemed like they was just always showing up in set lists. And I mean, it's a prog juggernaut in this era. I do love hearing all the way all the little parts unfold, and it's a composition that it tumbles, it twirls. It's like watching a gymnast. Although I would say again to remind people, Fish was not note perfect. There are definitely some flaws. This is not the gold medal Olympic gymnast performance of Gaiute. That's fine. And then also another thought upon re-listening to the song. I've kind of wondered what would happen if Fish ever decided to jam out that weird little heavy metal bit where it gets all furious before the final melodies there. I don't think it's ever happened. I don't think it will happen, but you never know with Fish.
Don't say it. From your lips to God's ears. I bet it'll happen at Dick's when they start playing there.
I hope maybe I've jinxed it. Yeah, they're going to start jamming Gaiute in a furious heavy metal fashion there at the end. To be determined, I suppose.
Well, Ben Whitlock, thank you for coming on today to talk about November 21st, 97 at Hampton Coliseum, one of the best shows of one of the best tours. And just remind us one more time, your band, where we could find them, and what to expect when we press play.
Sure. Why don't you check out the Burning Dirty Band? We have a number of albums available, both on our official website, on Bandcamp, on YouTube. If you're into fish, you'll probably find something to dig into with us. So, if you're an adventurous listener, give us a little taste.
And that's it for today's discussion with Ben Whitlock, but let's make sure we have everything right with the attendance bias fact check.
Attendance bias fact check.
When discussing the legacy of today's show at the Hampton Coliseum, both Ben and I mentioned the next night, November 22nd, 1997. It should be noted that that show is outstanding, opening with a Mike's Groove and featuring a 5-song second set with probably the best Halley's Comet ever played and a legendary tweezer to go with it. I mentioned a few times that this show was played toward the, quote, beginning or beginning middle of the fall tour in 1997. The tour lasted for 21 shows total, and November 21st, today's show, was the 6th show of the tour. So really, it was the beginning of the tour, which in my opinion makes it all the more impressive. When discussing how he got to the Hampton Coliseum, Ben was right on point with how long it takes to get there from James Madison University. According to Google Maps, the drive from JMU to Hampton is 3 hours and 11 minutes, and from what I could find, a Greyhound bus trip or public transit could take as long as 13 hours depending on the route. We also talked about Punch You in the Eye and its placement in set lists. Ben did his research and found out that it's open to show just 4 times leading up to this Hampton show. Those 4 times were New Year's Eve, 1995, August 7th, 1996 at Red Rocks, October 23rd, 1996 in Hartford, and July 9th, 1997 in Lyon, France. The 1981 Rolling Stones concert that Ben mentions toward the end of today's episode is called From the Vault. It took place on December 18th, 1981, and is available for free on YouTube. And that's it for today's episode. I'd like to thank Ben Whitlock for joining me today, Fish.net for its help with the fact check, and Fish.in for the outstanding recording used in today's episode. If you enjoy Attendance Bias, please support the show by leaving a rating and a review of it on your favorite podcast app. You can follow the show on social media, mostly Instagram and Twitter, and most of all, you can donate financially to the operating costs of the show at www.buymeacoffee.com/attendancebias. Thank you again for listening, and I'll see you next week on Attendance Bias.